Buenos días todos. My name is Michel Archambault. I work for Cummins inside the New Power Group, in fact, inside the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Technologies Group, which incorporates hydrogen production technologies, including electrolysis of water, as well as PEM fuel cells. Thank you to Corfo to organize this webinar. I look forward to your questions at the end of the presentation. Cummins is a company present in over 190 countries with 60,000 plus employees around the world. This slide is important because it shows that we invest a lot in research and development. In fact, in 2019, Cummins invested $1 billion in research and development. As part of that investment, they acquired some companies in the fuel cell and hydrogen production technology space, including Hydrogenics, for which I worked for most of my career. It is a company that has access to both hydrogen production technologies, including PEM and ALKALINE, as well as PEM fuel cells that are used in mobility. As an example, Cummins invested in hydrogen production, but also invested in different types of technologies to offer a wide range of solutions and help us address the Planet 2050 Cummins climate change targets. It includes the traditional diesel powertrain, as well as natural gas, hybrid electric, battery electric, and fuel cell electric. So we don't say that there's one solution that will help us meet these goals. It's actually a variety of solutions, and we always offer more than one technologies to meet the growing and changes. Inside that New Power Group, which is the fifth division of Cummins, are two units. The first one is electrified power, and it includes battery technologies. The second one is the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Technologies Group. Putting them together is a perfect fit because it allows you to electrify powertrains, provide mobile power solutions that are fully electric or electric with hydrogen and batteries. So it's not one technology, it is a mix of all technologies. And you can see that on that slide, starting from the left, with our battery technologies that are used for on-highway, off-highway. And in the off-highway, I will highlight the ever-growing need to decarbonize the mining sector. So we have access to technologies and powertrains that will be implemented to the mining sector, in particular of interest in Chile. We also have our PEM fuel cell technologies can also be used in the bus market, truck market. And you'll see later on, I will show a slide of the train market that we're addressing in Europe using our fuel cell technologies. In green, you've got hydrogen production technology, including our PEM and ALKALINE products. What is shown here is a PEM electrolyzer product, which is able to produce approximately 2 tons of hydrogen per day. And finally, as we invest and continue to invest in alternative technologies, we have acquired a company, a product from General Electric, a solid oxide fuel cell, and this one will help us address a stationary power supply using clean fuels. The typical markets for our fuel cell and electrolyzers are shown here. I mentioned buses, trains. We also have different types of municipal vehicles, including garbage trucks, for example, or another word to say it is refuse trucks, as well as class 5, 6, 7, 8 trucks. So heavy duty transportation is of prime interest. Finally, the electrolysis products is a very commercial operation. We have a couple of assembly plants around the world, but we also have a 70-year plus of electrolysis experience. And this has been very traditional markets. It's been for the industry, for the glass plants. In South America, we have a lot of projects for edible oil, so hidrogenación de grasas, for example, as well as other processes like steel, chemical plants, power plants, and so on. And one other market right now with hydrogen is the energy storage market. So we are developing larger products to help us capture this surplus renewable power and also predict a little bit, work with the variability of these renewable sources. And finally, our products are used to provide fuel to these fleets of trucks, buses, cars, and whatever type of vehicle can be put on the road. I mentioned that hydrogen is very traditional. If you look on the left, we'll not go into the full chart, but on the left, you can see where the hydrogen production comes from, mostly dominated by natural gas, coal, or oil. The yellow line is showing that very small hydrogen worldwide is produced using electricity. And what's it used for? If you go to the right of the screen, you'll see the main markets for the hydrogen. So very traditional industry in the refining sectors where hydrogen is used to remove sulfur, for example, or upgrade these fuels and these gasolines and petrol products. The second market is ammonia. Ammonia is used mainly for fertilizer, but there's multiple other applications requiring ammonia, which is a combination of nitrogen and hydrogen. And finally, you've got the iron market, methanol, and other byproduct uses for hydrogen. What's important to understand is that this electricity portion is electrolysis, and it's just poised to grow, because when you're using clean electricity, you're going to get clean hydrogen at the end. Whereas when you're using dirty or fossil fuels to produce your hydrogen, you will not get clean hydrogen. You will get, in fact, hydrogen that has emitted greenhouse gases. And we are trying to remove this from the equation. We started making electrolysis 70 years ago. So very mature company. I know we're not the only ones. It's a very old technology, electrolysis. What we're trying to do now is improve the total cost of ownership by working on a few criteria, namely the efficiency of the plant, the compactness of the plant, the ease of installation, the way it reacts to renewable energy. And all these will help us, these innovations help us reduce the cost of hydrogen and slowly displace the fossil-based hydrogen. As a fundamental, electrolysis is a very simple process. I mean, you're basically taking water and you're splitting it inside a cell stack. And this is showing an alkaline technology, but really what you're getting there is the membrane splits the water into hydrogen and oxygen, and you collect those gases. In our product portfolio, what you can see here, we will not go into all these specs, there's a lot, but you can see on the top, there's showing two things, either alkaline or proton exchange membrane. What you can see is that our alkaline products are really for smaller scale applications to, I would say, 500 kilowatt to 1 megawatt range products. As soon as you go above this capacity, it makes more sense using our technology to go with our proton exchange membrane products. These ones start at 1 to 2 megawatt and end up in the 5 to hundreds of megawatt range. We'll show you later on example of how that product can be scaled up to address the growing needs. In terms of efficiency, we are showing figures on the left side using the total plant from 5 to 5.4 kilowatt hour per cubic meter, which should be roughly 55 to 60 kilowatt hours per kilogram. On the PEM side, it's an all-in power consumption that I'm showing here with the 5.1 kilowatt hour per cubic meter. That includes the electrolysis, it includes the AC to DC conversion, so taking the power from the grid, converting it to DC, producing hydrogen, purifying the hydrogen, ventilation inside the containers. You've got the cooling systems that are tied to the plant. You've got a water treatment plant. You've got the lighting, the control system, the chillers. All this is included in the figure that you see at 5.1. And if we're going to the stack level, we've got a power consumption of about 3.6 to 4.3 kilowatt hour at the stack level for our PEM product. So very efficient technologies, producing very pure gas and very dynamic operation. In terms of references, if we look at our traditional alkaline industrial references, we've got a few. On top left is a glass plant in Colombia. In the middle is a power plant in Saudi Arabia. You've got a steel plant in India. You've got hydrogenation in Brazil, power plant in Russia, and another steel plant in Russia. So traditional. However, when we move on to energy storage, what we call power to gas, we're getting connection to wind power or solar power we're getting connection to some processes allow us to produce clean fuels, like the example on the right, where we're producing methanol using CO2 and hydrogen. At the bottom left, you've got a plant in Denmark, which is producing hydrogen for fueling stations to enable mobility. At the bottom right is the 2.5 megawatt electrolyzers used to provide flexible regulation services. What it means is basically we're taking power, fluctuating power from the grid, and we're helping stabilize the grid with this electrolyzer. When we look at our containerized PEM solution, you can see it comes in 2 containers. The dry cooler in this case was designed for that particular region. It varies via the climate and what the site requirements and site conditions. But what we're showing is that we have a few models that produce either 200 cubic meters of hydrogen, which is equivalent to about 435 kilograms, all the way to 1.1 ton of hydrogen per day in a footprint of 2 40-foot containers. When we scale up the technology and we use them in indoor use, and we take these stacks and we put them in our HYLYZER 1000 product, we're getting a 5 megawatt, 2.1 ton per day building block. This is what physically it looks like at an installation in Quebec, where we're producing 8.6 tons of hydrogen per day using clean hydropower. What you see, it's a very compact, very easy to install, and very industrial setting. In essence, that product, I've mentioned it produces 2.1 ton per day, is using 2 stacks. It has an efficiency of 40 to 47 kilowatt hour per kilogram, but 50 kilowatt hour per kilogram at the plant level. That includes the rectification of the power from AC to DC with transformer. We're taking medium voltage, anywhere between 4.16 kilovolts to 35 kilovolts. The pressure is a good differentiator in our technology. We're able to produce hydrogen without having the need to use any hydrogen compressor. So basically free pressure at a very low power consumption. So that has a significant impact on the total cost of ownership, meaning that you will produce hydrogen at pressure, no moving parts on the compression side. You don't have any power consumption as well to get to that 30 bar product pressure, sorry. Finally, very pure gas as well, with a 595 in terms of purity after a purifier. It's a very small footprint, and you don't have any area classification, meaning that you can install this technology in a building with no special classification, no special codes. If you look at an overhead view of what it can look like, a 10 ton per day plant or using this product is very compact, approximately 500 square meter, and you're including all the peripherals on the side that we can include or not include. But in this case, it's just a layout showing what can be done with the plant. I've put a news showing that this market is not only, it's a new market, but it's growing, and utilities around the world are starting to want to produce something else or do something else with their power. In this article, a public utility in the state of Washington in the US, on the west coast of the United States, has decided to convert their hydropower electrons basically to hydrogen. What they will do with the hydrogen is actually sell it. They will sell it to customers, and they have a compression station which will take the hydrogen and bring it into trucks that can then deliver the hydrogen to customers in the vicinity. So it's a change of mentality that utilities don't have to just sell power, they can now sell hydrogen as well. Earlier in the presentation, I showed you, I talked to you about grid services, how an electrolyzer is able to regulate the grid or balance the grid. And this is a slide of what we have been doing in Canada at that plant. In essence, we're getting a signal from the grid operator. And the grid operator, every 2 seconds, sends a new signal. And that signal is a power signal that fluctuates anywhere between 200 kilowatt to about 2.7 megawatt. We have to adapt. The electrolyzer takes that power signal and immediately responds to that signal and adjusts the production. What you see is the blue curve was a signal, and now you have the green curve matching the blue curve, meaning that the electrolyzer is able to adjust very quickly into very high variation of power. What it does is we're helping the network be more stable and provide a frequency regulation. And we're getting paid to do that service, which helps us get a lower cost of hydrogen. I will end with a few slides on the mobility sector. There is a good match between what we produce, the green hydrogen we can produce with our electrolyzers, and what they can do for our fuel cells technologies. Here you have a fuel cell circuit. I don't think there's an animation, but a fuel cell is the opposite of an electrolyzer. This is a proton exchange membrane. It takes hydrogen, it takes oxygen, and together they will form water, H2O, and liberate an electron, which will create that electricity loop. When we build our fuel cells and we package them into what you see at the bottom, a fuel cell power module, we build them into a fuel cell engine with a few of these fuel cell power modules that are designed and ventilated and put on, for example, in this case, a train. It's not a science fiction project. This is actually a real train. It's running at the moment. It's in Europe. There's 41 or 42 trains shipped already, 82 in order. These trains can do more than 1,000 kilometers in one fill and are for 300 passengers and can go all the way up to 140 kilometers per hour. They are really passenger trains carrying people every day with hydrogen and fully electric trains. In this slide, what we show is a few types of vehicles that can be electrified using our fuel cell products. I started with the train. We have semi-truck, transit buses. We've got refuse truck, school bus, excavator, a real wide range of products, and that is just the beginning. If we go a little bit deeper inside the fuel cell, we've got how we build it. We start with building the cell. We package these cells together. We put them and we package them into a fuel cell power module. And as I explained earlier, we then bring them into a fuel cell system that becomes the electric or hydrogen engine, if you say. And we can then put with storage controls that becomes a powertrain for the customer. And the reason we're doing this is also because we are very conscious that regulations are changing around the world. We have our Planet 2050 objectives that you can read on our website, our Planet 2050 of Cummins. But we also, in California, for example, have to comply to strict progressive transition to zero emission vehicle. If you look on the right side of the graph here, the table, you see that the Class 8 trucks have to be electrified. At least 40% of the fleets of Class 8 trucks, which are the biggest trucks on the road, would have to be zero emission. So we're transiting and producing these powertrains that then are used by truck manufacturers to electrify their fleets and become zero emission. That is what it looks like. So fast refueling, a long range, lighter weight than if you would only use our batteries. So really a solution that is a perfect mix between battery and hydrogen. I'll skip this one and I'll just go as well on buses. The same business case. You've got buses that can be with batteries, and we have battery electric bus, but we're also working on fuel cell electric bus because it gives a higher range. It has a bit more flexibility in terms of refueling. It's easier to refuel than to charge for longer periods of time. On this note, I end the presentation and really look forward to your questions. Thank you.